Studevant joining us today, an individual very experienced in knowledge management and has provided this wonderful little bio. This presentation is called Job Search Survival, How to Get Off the Island. Looking for a job can feel like being stranded on an island. You face a tidal wave of decisions and emotions. Join us for our meeting where Mirhonda Studevant, longtime STC Atlanta member and recent STC Florida transplant, will share her job search techniques to boost your confidence, hone your survival skills, and steer you toward your next opportunity, whether your current job situation is smooth sailing or rough chop. This session will help you consider ways to navigate a better course. Mirhonda, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. That was so exciting. Thank you, Nick. Thanks, everyone. So let me share my screen. I'm delighted to be here. And this comes through hard experience. So this is not because I've been hypothesizing about this for a long time. This is actually the fact that I want others to benefit from the experiences that I've had. Let's say I'm hovering that. Okay, so in just a moment, just let me know when you can actually see my presentation.
I can see it. It has popped up on the left side of the screen.
All right, fantastic.
I can see it.
Thank you. So again, my name is Mirhonda Studevant, and although I'm currently a knowledge manager and trainer with Glint, I really have had every job situation that you can imagine. So from contract to permanent, I've worked in small startups and behemoth global organizations. I've worked since I was 14 years old and have had as many as 3 part-time jobs when I was an undergrad. In 1995, I graduated from what was then the Southern Polytechnic State University in Marietta, Georgia, and I earned the first undergraduate degree that they awarded in technical and professional communication. Southern Tech did merge with Kennesaw State University a few years ago, so now they offer certifications and programs in technical communication and interactive design. So I'm saying that to say that I lived and worked in Metro Atlanta from 1995 until 2012 with no employment interruptions. However, I was laid off in 2012, and it was just devastating to me, having worked since I was 14. I have held, speaking of 14 jobs in my career. So I've fulfilled contracts or voluntarily resigned from 10 of those jobs. I was fired from 2 and laid off from 2. So this wealth of experiences is really the reason that I'm speaking with you this evening, just to share some of the lessons that I've learned. So I want to encourage you so that if you find yourself stranded, you'll know exactly how to survive and to escape from that unwelcomed island. So tonight we'll discuss ways for you to create your own escape plan. So these are actually the main steps. I actually moved to Florida a couple of years ago, so the likelihood that we can apply this information literally and figuratively is fairly high. We will include a Q&A portion both during the course of this presentation as well as at the end. So if you like, I'm also happy to show you some of the resources available, particularly on LinkedIn. So here's my disclaimer. I do work for a company that is owned by LinkedIn, but this presentation is not, I repeat, is not a full-blown LinkedIn commercial. So it's that I really enjoy working there and supporting their vision, which is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. So whether you're grappling with a stay or go decision or just find yourself in the market unexpectedly, I hope you'll find something beneficial for your journey. So I would like to present these steps for your consideration. Signaling for rescue, finding fresh water, finding food, nourishing yourself, and then avoiding injury. So let's get started. Simply put, signaling for rescue means networking. So you should reach out to your colleagues, your alma mater, social organizations, professional organizations like this one. No one can help you if they don't know that you're open to new opportunities. So even though it may feel counterintuitive, it really is critical to let others know that you're in the market. Your network can alert you to opportunities that you may not know about otherwise. So dozens of sets of eyes are far better than one. And you should also identify which sites you want to use to actually execute your controlled search. So it's okay to search multiple sites, but only post your profile or resume in one or two places. And LinkedIn actually has discretion that you can apply using LinkedIn settings. So it allows you to search while you're employed discreetly. And the reason that you don't want to really post your resume on every single job site, I can explain that. But first, I want to talk about simplyhired.com. I'm not sure how many of you have used that site, but it's essentially a meta search engine, and it searches the other job search sites. So Monster, Indeed, Career Builder, Yahoo, like all of the other sites, Simply Hired searches those. And another board I think people like, particularly for technical communication, is Dice. So it's really good to use something like Simply Hired to see what the job description is, kind of get some details, and then you can go to that individual board. But it's really important, sort of the way that companies may view the fact if they are searching across multiple boards for candidates, just like you're searching across multiple boards for potential employers, if they actually pull your resume from 2 and 3 different boards, I think that it gives this air of desperation. And with that takes some of your negotiating power away, because they think that you'll be more willing to accept an opportunity that's either less than ideal or for less money than you deserve. So that is why I give that advice. Back to my LinkedIn plug. So LinkedIn does allow for more interaction, and you can follow, you can do what I call borderline stalking companies, and you can also follow their feeds, announcements, to really get a better sense of what the personality of that particular organization is like. You can also look for employees who are already there to see what those backgrounds are like. So when you're in conversation with people from that organization about an opportunity, you can learn more about their background, how long they've been there, and it really helps you to prepare better for that initial conversation or for that interview. LinkedIn also makes it easy to request informational interviews with people who are in roles or organizations that interest you. So that way, you can establish some informal inroads and hopefully learn about unique opportunities ahead of their formal posting. So finding fresh water. This is about developing your mental model and thinking about titles and positions, sort of new ideas, ways to apply your existing skill set. So these are just some questions for your own reflection. One is, do you know your professional ideal? What are your preferences? Do you want to work for a large established company or a small startup? Do you want to have a strictly defined role, or would you enjoy the freedom of blazing your own trail? Do you want to be an individual contributor, or does the prospect of managing a team excite you? Do you want to work in a buttoned-up traditional environment or a more casual workplace? Do you want a more strategic or tactical role? What about remote work or travel? Would you find either of those prospects draining or invigorating? Finding fresh water involves introspection and research. You must establish a baseline mental model ahead of considering job descriptions. That way, you'll know how closely any given position matches your ideal. Strength Finders is something that I've used previously, and basically the premise of Strength Finders is, the way that they do performance reviews, where they talk about, here are your strengths, here are your weaknesses, and let's come up with a plan to help you improve in your areas of weakness. Strength Finders throws all of that out of the window, and essentially it's about exploiting your strengths. If it's an area that you're already weak in, rather than investing time into that area where you have low interest or low aptitude, Strength Finders is about finding ways to exploit and leverage those things that you're passionate about, and the things that give you energy. So that really is something that I recommend. It's designed from some of the folks that do Gallup polls, and it has, there's a book, and the book comes with access to an online assessment. And the book really gives different examples about how people, once they were really in tune with the areas of their strengths, then they knew basically how to approach both job opportunities. If people were presenting things to them, sometimes you may be approached about a promotion or what looks like a promotion, but you may be evaluating, is this something where I'll really be happy? Would I be happy changing from the role that I have and I'm thriving in? Should I really just make a change and do something different? And that's what Strength Finders does. It helps you to understand yourself so that you can really consider those opportunities, and you'll know ahead of time whether or not that particular position or opportunity has the components where you would be fulfilled and successful and where you could thrive in that role as well. The other thing is, for us as technical communicators, your job search absolutely must consider various titles. And part of that has to do with how much the title matters to you. So technical communicators, as you know, we have a variety of titles. I'm sure if we polled the people who are even on the call right now, technical writer, information architect, content strategist, content developer, business analyst, instructional designer, UX designer. I mean, there are many, many more. I know that there are probably ones that I didn't even call, but it's really important in our profession when you're searching for a position to search for keywords rather than limiting yourself to specific job titles. So you don't want to miss an opportunity simply because it's titled differently than you expect. The other thing is, depending on that organization and how mature they are, they may not even know particularly what to call that position. They know what they need, but they may not exactly know what to call it. I have gotten positions and then I've changed my own job title because what they hired me to do and what the job title was didn't really match, or I recognized some other needs. So it really is to your advantage to really search based on things that are broader, like content or communication or information, because as you know, we are all over the org chart. Just depending on what that organization is, we can fulfill the needs in a lot of different areas. So it's really good to just to not limit yourself, particularly if you are, in the market and wanting to see what's out there. You should also, when you talk about your salary range, you should calculate the amount that you need to earn to cover your expenses and obligations. So we really do ourselves a disservice, and I did have sort of reverse sticker shock when I moved to Florida, because Atlanta, which is where I moved from, has more of a tech market and therefore a stronger technical communication market. So moving to Florida, there's a lot more of a marketing spend to a lot of things, and technical communication or tech writing jobs are not bad, they're just different. So as a result, I was finding some descriptions that would interest me, and then I would look at the salary, and I think one I saw was as much as $12 an hour. And to quote a line from a movie, I can make more than that doing nothing. Like, I couldn't believe that they were actually wanting it. I mean, they had a very specific list of skills, but the fact that they were expecting to get that skill set for that amount was really just, it was shocking to me. The other thing is, sometimes people will accept those positions, but that really does a disservice, not just to you, but to our entire profession, because then we are undercutting ourselves, like we are undercutting the amount, and we're underrating our own expertise. So when we present ourselves as experts in all that we truly have to offer, then be unapologetic about the rate that you're expecting or requiring. It may take some digging and looking and networking, but it's really far better, and it advances our entire profession because people respect the dollar. Let's keep it real. When people are having to put someone in place and they are listing out the skills that they want, when you explain that in order to have that skill set or that level of experience or that level of expertise, it really boils down to the time cost quality area, which is you will get 2 out of 3, good, fast, or cheap. You will only get 2. And if companies want someone who is really good and can get work done really fast, it's fine. We can do that, but it's going to cost you. I'll pause here. I'll see if there are any questions, any comments.
We do have a couple in chat, and then we'll also take a moment just in case anyone on the phone or just, with a computer but preferring to speak would like to ask questions. Currently, there are 2 that I see in chat. One was from Jessica asking where to find, I believe it was Strength Finders. Where can that book and the online assessment be gotten or accessed? Celeste then posted a link to gallupstrengthcenter.com. Mirhonda, is that where you would recommend going to access this material?
Oh, absolutely. That's the best place. So thanks so much. You guys are a self-facilitating group, but I should have expected that.
And then the second question is from Alex. Question, there are some job titles that have the word manager, but might not involve leadership. Others don't and have a manager expectation. How do we wade through the job listings?
Oh, that's a great question. So what I've noticed is a couple of things. If I understand your question correctly, you're asking about taking a look at jobs that have manager in the title, but is not necessarily a manager of people, versus other positions that have manager in the title, but they are individual contributor roles. So for example, my job title is knowledge manager, and I have 2 contractors that sort of semi-report to me right now, but I am not an official people manager. And that's one of those things I learned through Strength Finders is I like to manage information. I don't like to manage people. So when you're looking at positions, something that someone in HR taught me once is that it sort of depends on the way that the title is listed. Like you may see manager in the title, and sometimes it'll vary, but if you see like manager, comma, and what that area is, that's usually someone who's a manager of people. Whereas if you see manager at the end of the title, like my title is knowledge manager, that can be an individual contributor role as opposed to a manager of people. Great question. Okay, if there are no other questions, I will go on. Let's see, did I do the plug for the STC salary survey?
No, but that is a great plug. It helped me when I was job searching.
Yes, it's fantastic. And the STC salary survey is one of those perks and benefits of membership. And it's available at the society level site. So at stc.org, and you can take a look and see what the going rate is. I think particularly when we get into contract situations, we're always trying to be sure that we are commanding a good salary, but not pricing ourselves out of a job, but at the same time, not undercutting, like I was mentioning earlier. So the STC salary survey is a fantastic resource. Highly recommend it. And then you can also see it's also good, not even just for the job search, but when it's time for your performance and evaluation, when we're talking about raises and promotions, you'll be able to have that point of comparison to see how, what you're earning and how it compares to others with similar level of experience. So it is a fantastic resource.
And just before we move on, I will count silently to an undisclosed number, just in case anyone had any other questions. Nope. Okay, please go on, Miranda.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Nick. So the next area is finding food. So this has to do with nourishing yourself, taking care of yourself based on the wellness model, and really skills as well as learning and just doing things basically to sort of help yourself. So finding food really is about nourishing yourself. So in the midst of a job search, you may need to intellectually feed yourself. So sharpening your skills. And there's really, at this point, there's so much that's available online for free. But let's see, I was trying to see if I do have it here. So as far as nourishing yourself, the 6 tenets of wellness, this is actually something that I got. I'm not sure how well you can see this, but I keep this near my desk. And the 6 tenets have to do with your thoughts, breathing, conscious breathing. So basically, that belly rise on inhale and sink on exhale. This is fantastic for stress and all of that kind of thing, because looking for a job, thinking about transitions, all of those things can be stressful and anxiety ridden. So it's very important to take care of yourself. If you don't, it doesn't put you in the best frame of mind in terms of changes or transitions. So really taking care of yourself is really the critical part to this whole thing. If you don't do that, the rest of this won't work. So the other areas in terms of the 6 tenets of wellness, hydration. And so being sure that you drink plenty of water. Hydration is not coffee, technical writers. Hydration is water. And nutrition, being sure that you eat, that you take care of yourself, make good food choices. And then movement, just getting yourself up and off the computer. Sometimes I know from doing those super extended job searches, you can just spend all day sitting on a machine, sitting on the computer, but you really have to give yourself a break. So getting up to take a walk, even if you give yourself like a whole day away from the job search where you're not obsessing about it and watching your email like a hawk, all of those things are really important just for your overall well-being. And then the last thing is rest. Go to bed, get some sleep, do good things for yourself. And then that just positions you to really be in the right frame of mind so that you're clear-headed as you're thinking about what your opportunities will be, developing that mental model for what your ideal situation looks like. And then as opportunities present themselves, as you find them, you'll have that baseline that you can compare it to, and you'll be clear-headed as you're thinking about that, and instead of being sort of a wave of emotion and stress and that kind of thing. So getting back to sharpening your skills, there is really a lot that you can learn online for free. So you can view product demos. There are webinars that are available for free. You can sign up for free online courses. They're called MOOCs, which stands for Massive Open Online Courses. And there are sites like Coursera, and they offer classes from some of the finest institutions in the world. And they have a bunch of courses on almost anything that you may be interested in. They're offering a course. Now, the MOOCs are like college courses, so they're more extensive, but there are also places like YouTube. You can look up videos. I'm almost certain that almost anything that someone may be interested in learning about in terms of how to do something, there is a short or long YouTube video about it. You can also go to websites for popular software applications such as Madcap Flare or Camtasia. Like, they have free trials. So even though those trials may not have the same functionality as the paid version, it is enough that you can become familiar with the behavior and the operation of that software. And if you're a fan of lynda.com, they were acquired by LinkedIn, and they are now branded as LinkedIn Learning. So you can find information about all manner of soft skills and technical topics for free through LinkedIn Learning. And that's not with a premium membership. That is actually something that any member can access. I'll pause for questions before I go to the next slide or comments. Okay, the next step is avoiding injury. So this is about building your digital reputation, being sure to update your resume, and then developing your own tracking system. So building your digital reputation really is about establishing yourself as an enthusiast or a thought leader. So develop a professional view of yourself. So your Twitter handle, LinkedIn profile, if you want to create a blog, those types of things. And it doesn't mean that you have to author everything yourself. You can be a curator of content, and you can just promote things that would be of interest to your fellow professionals. And that also really helps you so that when someone Googles you, they will see that, oh, they're professionally active. Oh, they're very engaged. Oh, they have a lot of interest in this particular area, or they, sent that link to that really cool article. So it's something that really helps when you're in the market and people are looking at you if you are intentional about developing your digital reputation and then establishing yourself as someone who is a thought leader in a particular area. The good thing is there are so many specializations and so many areas of interest. It really is, I don't want to say easy, but there are lots of opportunities to create that persona for yourself. One of the other things that I recommend is creating a digital portfolio. So you can generate your own versions, either of various deliverables that you've already worked on, or you can create your own, or as you are going in and trying out these different software applications just to kind of get exposure to different types of applications, you can create your own projects and include those in your digital portfolio. So that really allows you to have things at the ready. The whole thing is about being ready. So if a potential employer is asking about writing samples, you can essentially point them to your website, to your digital portfolio, and that eliminates sending files, attaching things, a lot of back and forth. It just makes you look very polished and efficient and prepared. And they don't have to be extremely complex. I can say, being on the other side when I've been in a hiring mode, it's always been that I'm looking for some fundamental things. Can the person write well? Do they have strong command of the English language? Do they convey concepts clearly? How is their layout? Is it something that's clean and easy to read, or is it something that looks sort of convoluted? Does it look like something that they actually wrote? And if I ask people about that, and really the digital portfolio is really, that is the way that you get in the door. That is not supposed to do all of the talking or representation for you. It's just literally just providing those samples so that people can see, yes, this is a qualified candidate. This is someone that I'm more interested in learning more about. And the other thing is you can share those more in-depth examples or your, actual work samples with the appropriate sections, either removed or and sample, I mean sample. So I don't mean an entire manual. I don't mean an entire chapter. I mean like one page, because you want to be able to speak to, I created this deliverable using this application under this situation. So to let people know I am able to create this content with a short timeline. If there were any special situations or conditions, I had to create this in a system that was being sunsetted in 2 weeks, or I was generating this when I only had a prototype and I had to generate these graphics. So basically explaining, giving that really just the information about not only seeing what you created, but the conditions under which you created it. So this is the software I used. This was the situation. I was on a 2-week deadline, and being able to speak to that is really something that's beneficial and really paints a full picture of your capability to potential employers. I was also curious about how many people have portfolios, and if so, if they are hard copy or digital.
I know I can speak to when I was in job searching. During my final semester at UCF, I'd had a project actually that helped me build an online portfolio, and then I polished that, but I also made a physical version that I took in, and the physical one ended up being something that was nice to just, put it in a nice binder, show I have it, show I'm willing to flip through it. It worked pretty well. And I also see in chat that Alexandra mentioned she has a digital one. Celeste mentioned digital portfolio with WordPress site.
Very nice. Glad to hear that. That's great. And that was something, many, many moons ago, that was something that was like truly cutting edge when I was out of school. And it is something that is essentially a requirement now. Just like Nick was mentioning, it was part of his, exiting process in terms of finishing and wrapping up his program. And it really is, it's when they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, being able to have that portfolio and just to highlight and showcase what you made, it really does speak volumes, and it just gets you through that qualification process much faster.
Miranda?
Yes.
Mine is physical, and the reason for that is primarily because the material I was writing was proprietary, so I could not put it online. So I was able to show a physical copy and retain ownership of that and still show what I had done to a prospective employer.
Thank you. That is an excellent point. Thank you so much. You're exactly right. So having that physical version, that's something that you can take with you to an interview, and it allows you to show things that would be proprietary that you absolutely would never ever post online, not if you didn't want to get sued. So thank you. That is an excellent case for why it's really good to actually have both. Thank you so much. Sure, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. There was a question in chat, but do you want me to wait or go with it now?
No, go ahead, Nick.
It was a question from Deborah. Deborah mentioned she's been in a management position for the last 10 years. The question is what to do to establish a new portfolio in that situation.
Oh, that's terrific. So you can create your own projects, so they don't have to necessarily be ones from your employer, but you can go in and using applications that you're familiar with. You can, again, it just needs to be a small sample. A lot of times, if there's something, I find it that it's easy when you're generating your own portfolio samples, if it's something that you're interested in. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be a technically complex topic. It really kind of depends. So if you are going for a position or interested in roles that are highly technical, then you might want to select something that is around or in the realm of that technical area. But otherwise, I also think that it's helpful to do something that you have personal interest in, and then you can do several things. So there may be some documentation that you see that actually looks terrible, like maybe it's laid out poorly or it's not written well. We're consumers, so we don't think about it, but we constantly have documentation coming to us all the time. So it may be some documentation that is already around you that you just completely rework and then create that as something that you can include in your portfolio. That's a great question.
Alex had a related question, might be a similar answer, but I'm going to mention it just in case, because this is definitely something I have personal interest in too. Along the same lines, what would someone do if they spent their entire career in aerospace and defense?
Oh, that's a great question. So I actually worked for a company prior to my current job that was in satellite communications, primarily for government and military. So it was something similar where everything is proprietary, like there is nothing that you can put out there. So what I would recommend is to take a variation. So it may be something on the topic of aerospace, but not a deliverable that you created exactly. So you can create a parallel one. So it can be something similar to what you created, but not anything that's going to, breach any of your confidentiality rules, but it can be something about a similar topic, or maybe the non-classified version. And that might be the thing, that might be an excellent challenge. That was something that I created, not for my digital portfolio, but for my paper-based portfolio, was taking something that was classified and removing all of those elements and making it something that was general and generic enough that I could show it to a prospective employer and not feel like some government agency was going to swoop in on me and confiscate my portfolio. That's a great question. Thanks, Alex.
Great answers. Thank you, Miranda. Counting to my undisclosed number, just in case anyone on voice chat had any other questions before moving on. Okay, all set.
All right. So next I wanted to just kind of talk about updating your resume. So my recommendation is to create a text, a Word, and PDF version. So one of the reasons it seems now that applying for a job is because it seems that every single employer has a different portal or different requirements for you to apply. So if you have your resume as a text file, then you can cut and paste that if they have an online application. And then by the same token, some companies only accept Word attachments or only accept PDF attachments. So be sure to do that. So create a text version, a Word, and a PDF version, and then keep them in sync. And then that way, basically when you update one, update all three so that you'll always have them ready. And then follow suit with your cover letter and your interview letters. So that way, if you have your own library of templates ahead of time, it really allows you to drop in a few specifics for that employer while being very responsive, which is impressive. So I'm also happy to show or share part of my job search library if our schedules permit. One of the other things is if you're actively engaged in a job search, be sure to develop a system of organization that works for you. So have a digital or paper-based way of tracking job descriptions and your status with each opportunity. So for some, this may mean creating a notebook where you print out the job descriptions and then keep a log of your activities and your interactions on the back. For others, it may be creating notes on your phone or on your computer so that you can access them. For me, back in the day, I actually used to create a log using index cards. So for every position I applied to, I'd create a card and I'd have all the company name, the location, the contact details, and then below that, I'd have an activity log. So the date and the activity. This is the day that I originally applied. This is the day I heard back from the recruiter and scheduled the screening. This is the day that I had a conversation. And then I kept the cards near the phone. And so that way, when the company called, I could pull that specific card. And then I just impressed the recruiter because, it seemed like, first of all, I had like the world's best memory. Like, oh, yes, Claudia, I'm happy to speak with you about the blah, blah, blah role. And they were like, wow, as if it made it sound as if I had been sitting there the entire time, breathlessly waiting for them to call me back. And all I was doing was flipping through some cards that were near my phone. So there really are ways to digitally replicate that. So in recent years, I've used spreadsheets or note features on my phone. And then the other thing that I do is I rate the employers based on their rate of response. So by that, I mean, do they seem to have an immediate need, or are there a lot of delays that give the impression that filling the position is not a high priority? Some companies go through the exercise of posting applications, not necessarily because they have an opening, but because they want to start maintaining a constant pool of candidates. So you can really establish their time frame in your conversation. And that's one of the questions you absolutely need to ask, which is, how soon are you expecting to hire someone? That's a very legitimate question, and that's very important because that gives you insight into their planning as well as your own, and whether that's something that you can consider. Also remember that screening and interviewing aspects of your job search are a two-way street. So it's not only about whether your potential employer is impressed with you, but what do you think of their organization? Do they seem to communicate well between the various departments? Is the applicant process smooth, or are there communication obstacles that really reflect poorly on that employer? Does the recruiter or hiring manager seem interested in painting a realistic picture of the company, expressing what they see as current challenges? Are they being forthcoming, or do you feel like something is being omitted? Do they just want a warm body to crank out content, or are they really interested in your strengths and aspirations? I really believe that the ideal situation for every individual exists. It's really just a matter of making connections so that you can seize that opportunity. So I'll pause and see if there are any questions.
In chat, Deborah requested to ask a verbal question. Deborah, please.
Miranda, one of the issues that I found was I would send a resume and I would get feedback on the resume. And every single agency or person or whatever said, your resume is awful. You need to do it this way. You need to do it that way. Is there anything that you found that works the best? Because I went to 3 different professionals that did my resume, and the next professional says, oh, no, you don't, that's not the way you should do it. So that's what I was, coming across a lot of things that were that, or sending a resume, and the other part of that was, just getting ghosted. You get an interview, you get talking, they like you, they go through all this, and then they ghost you. Anyway, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Deborah. So that first part, in terms of different resume writing services and professionals, I literally have never used one of those services because I feel like I'm a technical writer and I should be able to convey my own information. And I think that part of that is like a salesy part. It depends on the motivation, but I can definitely understand because, as you stated, you've been in a management position and you wanted to really prepare yourself and for re-entering the job market. But part of that really has to do with your own intuition, like which version of those various versions you have did you feel best represented you and your breadth of experience and what it was that you were interested in doing.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to add, the reason I wanted to ask was I had a resume that I started 25 years ago. And it got me every single job position I ever had. And then I went to, as a contractor for a while. Oh no, we need to change it. It needs to be like this, or you need to do this, just trying to make it better. And once I changed it, I never got a hit on it at all. And it was just one of those things that got to go back to the old school way of doing it that I did myself. So it was really interesting. But yeah, I appreciate the information.
Sure. And I was going to say, I think you've answered your own question, and I'm thinking about it, and I've made, fundamentally, my resume is still the same. I did make a, earth-shattering change about a decade ago when I went from sort of, as I matured in my career, I changed my very first area to, instead of having an objective statement, I changed it to a summary of qualifications, because at that point I felt like I was far enough in my career that instead of me trying to, fit and customize my skills and experience to a particular employer, that I would basically just summarize and tell them what I had to offer. And we'll let them do all of the work of saying, where does she match? Where does she fit in? How could we leverage her skills here? So basically, I sort of, in my mind, I reversed it and put the onus on the recruiter or the hiring manager to figure out whether or not the particular set of skills, and I do take that approach, like Liam Neeson from Taken, I have a particular set of skills, but to see whether or not that particular set of skills, how that aligned with the goals of the organization. And in almost every post, follow-up interview that I follow-up letter rather to an interview, I always point out the specific items from my resume. So both in my cover letter, and then after I have the conversation, I'll follow up and I highlight those items again. But making that summary of qualifications, making that addition. And then the other thing is a few years ago when people started digitizing everything, there was all of this extra advice about ways to be sure that you got hits in search engine optimization. So I got advice like, put additional keywords in your margins in white so that so that you'll come up on all of these hits. But I also changed some of the verbiage. So in my skills section, I talk about areas where I'm proficient, areas where I'm familiar, and then areas where I've had exposure. So I do have a very long list of, software applications, programming languages, that type of thing. But I also distinguish because I don't want to misrepresent and say, I'm a JSON expert when I'm not. So what I'll do instead is say, proficient with, and I'll have those software applications, and then I'll say familiar with, and then I'll have a second tier, and then I'll say exposure to. And those are, my third tier of things, so that I can speak to my experience without feeling like I'm, misrepresenting any of my experience. Great questions. Let's see, there was a second thing. I feel like I missed the second part of your question, though. We talked about the resume. What was the
Ghosting.
So the ghosting. So the ghosting, and that's never happened to me. No, that has happened to me plenty of times. And to me, that really says more about the potential employer. So, and I usually take that to mean that there's either an internal conflict, or that may mean that the position that they thought they needed or wanted to hire for, that maybe they either didn't have the appropriate approvals, or maybe there's a financial reason that they withdrew. Because what I find is in a lot of cases, companies, want to present themselves in the best light. And that's why it's really important to, or helpful to have sort of multiple avenues or multiple points of contact within the organization. That's why, doing something like connecting with someone on LinkedIn or through your network is actually really helpful, because then if you get ghosted, it's like, okay, I'm being ghosted on the official front, but let me reach out to this contact and see whether, what's going on with that position. Have they hired someone else? And I have noticed, though, to your point, that there seems to be a lot more of that in the current market than I've ever seen previously. So one of the things that I would do when I'm tracking has to do with tracking responsiveness. So I literally would have sort of a list of the companies. Like I had a fire symbol, a snowflake symbol for ice, and then I think I had like the theatrical happy sad mask if they were sort of so-so. So if there were companies that I feel like I applied and it just went into a black hole and I didn't hear back from them anymore, then they were on my ice list. If the company, I feel like, 4 seconds after I submitted, they were calling me and trying to schedule and arrange something, then they were on my fire list. So that was the other thing is also by evaluating that for myself, then it helped me to align my expectations and not to take it too personally when I got ghosted. Great questions.
Counting to the magic number. Any others before we continue? All set.
All right, thanks. So in summary, you can find your way off this island by taking special care to signal for rescue, which is letting your network know that you're in the market. Finding fresh water, which is developing your mental model and thinking about new titles, new positions. Finding food, which is to nourish yourself, applying the wellness model, taking a look at sharpening your skills, and even learning the language. That was one of the things that Stacy brought up, was talking about standards and how different positions and roles have different standards, and we'll ask about writing to those standards. So even if you don't have a full-blown, detailed, in-depth knowledge, just sort of exposing yourself to that kind of gets you to the, well, I've taken a look at them, as opposed to, no, I've never heard of that, or I've never seen that. Because I think the entire thing really has to do with a growth mindset. And I really believe that that's what employers are looking for, are people that even if they don't fully know everything that's involved, that they feel confident that the person has enough interest and acumen that they can get up to speed quickly. And then the last point is avoiding injury, which involves building your digital reputation, updating your resume, creating your very own job search library, and developing that tracking system. So with that, I will be happy to take additional questions.
So while everyone is thinking up their questions, I'll go ahead and just relate a few comments and resources that have been shared in chat throughout the presentation.
Okay.
Some resources for training. Catherine mentioned, I actually just found out recently, in case anyone else is a student, LinkedIn Learning is free for UCF students, faculty, and staff. Has the Linda content that you mentioned, Miranda. Mm-hmm. Alex mentioned you can also check your local library, a local public library, for online training and audiobooks. Jessica shared a few resources related to certifications. She said, I think the higher level of CPTC certification also requires a sample project, which would provide another potential portfolio piece. And then Jessica shared, for Flair, Here's a link. Scroll to the bottom to see the information about creating a project. I'll go ahead and just read off the URL real quick. It's also in chat for anyone who has access to the chat. www.madcapsoftware.com/services/certification/how-to-get-mad-certified.aspx. And also, ghosting victims have hope. Catherine shared, I was just ghosted last week from a company that offered an interview and still haven't responded when I provided my availability. You're not alone. And Celeste said, it happens more often than not.
Yes, that's sadly very true. There, and then for reasons unbeknownst to you, people who seem very interested, all of a sudden you just don't hear from them. So what I do is just slide them over to my lukewarm or ice column, and then I just move on. Because I will say, sadly, it does give me great satisfaction if someone circles back, sometime later, and I go, "Oh, well, thanks so much, but I'm no longer in the market." Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, that's that living well is the best revenge thing.
We do have a question in chat. How do we learn more from Alexandra? How do we learn more about the job opportunity that was mentioned at the beginning?
Oh, you can contact me. I'm glad you asked. So you can just email me. I'll be happy to connect you. One of the other things that I found that has been helpful for me recently is to consider contract positions. Previously, that was just something I'd gone back and forth throughout my career between contract and permanent roles, but I really found that contracting gave me an opportunity to really sort of try on. It's kind of like trying on a pair of shoes. Like I would get a chance to try them on, see how I like the organization, see if it was all of the things that we discussed in the interview. And typically, there would be either extensions or there would be conversions to permanent. So the position that I had prior to the one that I have right now, it started off as a contract, and it was initially, I want to say, a 4-month contract, and I got extended twice. Then I converted to permanent, but then I found my dream job, so I had to go. But I think that that's something that perhaps more people should really consider, particularly now we're kind of more in a freelance market. So I think that a lot of organizations are a lot more receptive to that than they might have been previously. So I think it's definitely something worth considering.
Do we have any? Oh, let's see. Oh, Stacy shared, me too. Most of my contracts turned into years of work.
Thank you. I'm glad I have folks on there to validate what I'm saying. But this has been great. I really enjoyed this conversation.
It's a great conversation. Alexandra asked, was it said what the job was?
So the opportunity that I'm aware of is a contract role. It sounds like it's a short-term contract. So one of those connections that I made was with a recruiter with a company called Training Pros. So she'll call me periodically and just kind of see what my bandwidth is. Occasionally, I have done some moonlighting simply because she had something that was, kind of small and quick, and it's like, yeah, I can do extra for a little while, but yeah, it's basically technical writing, and I know the role is technical writing. I know that it's a contract, but I was actually supposed to have a follow-up conversation, basically to tell her that I wasn't available, but I told her that I would see if there were any other people that I could send to her. So happy to share that.
Alex shared a observation. The last 2 times I've been headhunted, the initial contact was via LinkedIn. Oh, and Alexandra said thanks. And we have a question from Catherine.
I'm kind of in a weird place right now. I'm currently a grad student doing technical communication, but my bachelor's degree was in journalism. So I do have a lot of writing and editing experience. What do you kind of recommend for someone in my place? Because if I apply, they see journalism, but they also see, oh, she's not done with the degree yet. And I have noticed that some job opportunities do ask for a degree in the technical communication field. So if there's any kind of, an internship or something that you recommend while I'm just going through the waters, I guess.
Yes, it helps when you can read my mind. So I was definitely, that's actually what I had jotted down, was about internships. And that will give you some exposure, and you'll see how your skills will translate. So all of your journalistic skills as it relates to pursuing information, researching, interviewing, all of those things definitely come into play in terms of technical communication, because you'll learn different ways and you'll probably be more adept than some of the others of us on the phone at extracting information from people. I'm better at that now than I used to be, but you'd be very good at that. So I think that pursuing internships first, because you know that people would have that mindset where they would want you to be trained and learning what that system is. I think the other thing that you may want to consider has to do with marketing, because there's so much about audience analysis and perspectives and proposals. And I think that would be another area, like marketing communication itself, I think is something else that you could consider, because it wouldn't be as much hardcore tech if people seem to be concerned about the technical background, but that still allows you to leverage your journalistic experience.
Yeah, I have definitely looked into the marketing aspect, and I know that's quite a few of the jobs that I'm looking at now, because I quit my job a month ago. I was a receptionist, and honestly, there was no room for growth. I was there for a year and a half, and I was an administrative assistant with customer service, and the receptionist they fired, and they were like, "Hey, we need someone who can do the job. Here you go." And I was just kind of dumped there.
Oh, yeah, no good. The other thing is, because of all of the social media, like there are people that all they do is manage the digital reputation for different organizations.
Mm-hmm. I've looked into that as well.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be a good direction for you, particularly now. And then you can use that as a springboard into something more technical when you finish.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Great
question. Oh, and we've got another question in chat from Bernard. The question is, I was once offered a position with a local government entity after one phone interview. My instincts told me not to accept the offer. Is it good to listen to your instincts in this type of situation?
Always. Next question. No,
Right.
I think that I think that it is always good to pay attention to that little voice on the inside. And if something doesn't feel right, doesn't smell right, doesn't sit well, what do they say? Sometimes rejection is man's rejection is God's protection, or something like it's. I think that it is really okay for some opportunities to slide, that they may be inadvertently doing you a favor. And I have had to remind myself of that sometimes, but definitely trust your instinct. Go with your instinct.
We do have some time left for further questions. Oh, Bernard said thank you for that.
Sure.
Anyone on voice chat want to chime in? I'm counting to a longer number this time. Come on.
I have a question. It's not really anything applicable. I'm just interested. What's the longest you've stayed with one company?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
12 years.
12 years.
Yeah. Yes. Let's see. Let me make sure. And actually, there's one company that I was. So let's see. Make sure I'm not telling the fib. So 12 years, but it was at 3 different intervals. So there's one company that I interned with. I went back and worked there, and that's how I learned about knowledge management. I got very interested, but I was also disenchanted because at that time they were not doing very much web-based authoring, and I was extremely interested in that. So I left to do a contract so that I could learn a different set of skills. And then I went to grad school and got hired back there while I was in grad school because I discovered that knowledge management was really my passion. So yes, I haven't been hopping and skipping around. Like I said at the top, it was really a long time that I worked uninterrupted, and with no unemployment breaks. But then once I had the unemployment break, then I found myself going around a lot. But I also believe that's because I have this fundamental belief about the fact that, our ideal situation is there. And I read a book a few years ago that talked about, and I think it's called Expect to Win, and it's by Carla Harris. But she likened the situation, employment, to finding like being in a house. So are you in the right house? Are you in the right chair? Sometimes I found that I was in the right organization, but in the wrong role, or vice versa. And I would continue to look until I, finally felt that I was both in the right organization and in the right role within that organization. Great question.
Yeah. Oh, so I know you said you're not hop skipping it around. I feel like that's how I've been, because I'm in my longest role ever. I just hit 3 years. I'm like, finally, I've made it a while. Granted, the company's been sold and my role's changed and everything. But how do you know when you're not, like, is it just a sense you have, the wrong house, wrong chair, or are there certain things you look for?
So that's great. So it's basically like, what are the things that give you energy? So that kind of gets back to that strength finder thing. So if at the end of the day, you feel like you have actually accomplished something and you are pleased and looking forward to what you will be doing, if you're kind of in joyful anticipation of what you'll be doing or things that are coming up, if you're looking forward to them, I think that that's a very different situation than if you have the feeling, now I'm going to date myself, but if you're going into work like, time to make the donuts, okay, let me do this again, let me try to get my, fortitude together just so I can walk through the door, what's going to be the crisis today, or if you find that you just feel that it's just constantly uphill, but there's not a good reward, or what are the things that just give you energy and bring you joy. If you just feel like you're drained, I just have a very strong belief that we spend far too much time and energy at work to do something that we don't enjoy.
All right. Thank you.
I know this is something Bethany and I actually have talked about before, and we tend to be on opposite sides of this spectrum. So I'll ask a related question. I know that the trend lately has been toward more, a bit more hop skip, constantly kind of reinventing oneself, finding new opportunities, new roles. Is there also a place for that more quote unquote traditional, find a company, stay with it your entire career kind of thing? Or is that just ill-advised in this day and age?
That's a great question. I think it depends on the maturity of the company. So one of the things that I like about the position that I have as a knowledge manager is essentially what a knowledge manager does is take a look at basically the communication system. So basically how communication flows through the company, what are the processes, how are we able to be sure that whomever the person is, whether they're a stakeholder internally or externally, that they're able to find the information that they need. Can they get exactly what they need, and do they know, can they trust the information that they have? Is it the latest and greatest? So as a knowledge manager, my position changes. So even though my title is the same year after year, the responsibilities change because there may be new software implemented. There may be other things going on. So because of that, I think it really depends on the maturity of the organization. If you are in an organization that may be younger and still sort of establishing and finding themselves and figuring out their identity, it may be dynamic, where both the environment around you is changing and then your role itself may be changing. So part of it has to do with the maturity of the organization. And then the other thing has to do with your own tolerance for change. So if you find yourself like, if they're, we're totally, we're changing our mission statement again, we're going to do this and now we want to be this. But, it really depends on that combination of things. That's a great question. What is your own personal tolerance? And then how mature is that company in defining and identifying what their market is and who they're serving and catering to?
Thank you very much.
These are great questions. You guys are great.
Everyone, keep them coming. We've still got some time if anyone has anything to add in chat or voice. Also, while everyone's thinking about questions, one thing to note is, again, we will send out the slides after the presentation. And for anyone who are maybe on the phone and did not see, the final the final slide includes contact information from Miranda. So Miranda, thank you again for sharing that. Sure. And I do have a question. Let's see. Jessica has a verbal question. Jessica, I believe you are on mute currently. Okay, Jessica's going to type it. A little technical difficulty. Actually, somehow you were muting me. That was weird. Okay, so that's being typed. Miranda, while that's being typed, this is the question. How does the job search change for a work from home situation?
Let's see, how does the job search change for work at home? The search doesn't change. Once you start that change. So, do you mean the looking for a job itself and what that's like, or the fact that you're targeting a remote position? And this is a great topic, by the way, because we haven't even touched on that, and I am a remote employee. Okay, so targeting remote positions, that does change. So actually, that is something I think that technical communicators, by virtue of our typically introverted personalities, that we actually thrive in those situations. Probably for most of my career, I have worked from home at least part of the time. And again, to my earlier point about the company's maturity and what their view on that is, I've had positions where I have been a remote employee, but they expect me to absolutely be available online, sort of changed from my desk from one time, from this time in the morning to this time at night. And then I've also been in other environments that are more flexible in terms of just trusting you to get the job done and, being available. So it really, part of that depends on the culture. Targeting remote positions, it's really interesting. Right now, we're in a place where there are remote opportunities. So you can do that search, but it is kind of odd because sometimes if you try to put that in, most job search engines will have you put in a location. So there would be but if you put in the word remote, there is literally a city, I think in Oregon, named Remote. So if you put that in, it looks like you're applying for jobs in remote Oregon. So it can be sort of interesting, but it's also very telling because some organizations don't want to promote the fact that the position is remote, usually for sort of internal political reasons. So in some cases, I've found that what I would do is I would just look and just do a broad search, not for any particular location. Or if I came across the position and sort of removed all of the geographic boundaries and I saw things that I was interested in, I would then reach out. And this, again, is where it's helpful in terms of LinkedIn, because you have the poster's name. So you know what person, the identity of the person in many cases who posted the position. And you can just send a note ahead of applying. So before you even invest the time to apply and to consider, you can just say, hi, I'm very interested, I'm well qualified, but I wanted to know whether or not this position is, open to a remote employee. So that's one of the things that I have done with success previously, is I feel like if the more qualified you are, the more that you can essentially, I don't want to say demand that situation, but the stronger case you build for the fact. And then it also depends on the nature of the work. So when I was working for that satellite communications company, Everything was locked down, proprietary rather. There were, objects in Pelican cases I can't tell you about. And part of what I had to do was to take pictures of the equipment so that I could create diagrams and set up and all that kind of thing. So that job was not that was not a, remote type position. But then, thanks, Lori. But then there are other areas where if you can work remotely, and sometimes there may be some adjustments that are needed on your part. So, for example, right now I'm working for a company that has a majority of its workers in Silicon Valley. So I am on the East Coast, but I also have workers that are in Singapore, that are in London, which is 5 hours ahead. I think I literally know what time it is everywhere in the world, but I did make a conscious effort to slightly adjust my workday to a later day so that I would be just slightly more aligned and basically have more core hours in common with the people who are on the West Coast.
That's a great question, Jessica. In fact, it sparked a related question from Alex. Are W-2 remote employees expected to have sophisticated office furniture already, or will the company help set that up?
I should totally just show you, pick up my computer and show you my office. So it really depends on the employer. So some employers will make allowances for remote employees. So it's not that they'll fully outfit you with, a beautiful state of the art office, but some things such as maybe a sit-stand desk, things like that, maybe a second monitor. So usually they will be happy to provide the equivalent of what you would have if you were physically on site. So if someone who is on site can request a second monitor, you can request a second monitor. But if no one else on site has a sit-stand desk and, you're off in your remote role saying, hey, I need a sit-stand desk, that's probably not going to happen. But the good news is if you make those investments yourself, then you can write them off on your taxes. And you also don't have to worry about the company coming in if you and that company part ways saying, hey, I'm going to need to get my cool sit-stand desk back. Great question.
We've got about 10 to 12 more minutes in case anyone has any other questions, comments, resources, anecdotes related to the topic, you name it. This is the time.
And by the way, I created my digital persona, which is OKKM Chef. And what I did was take a page out of Scott Abel's book. So he is known as the content wrangler. And he really just combined his love of two things. And I was thinking, what is the thing that I really like enough that I would want to talk about it all the time and sort of combine that with my profession to generate this, unique digital persona. And the thing I came up with was cooking. So I love William Sonoma. We have a relationship, and I like cooking and recipes and, overhead cooking videos, all of that kind of thing. So that's when I came up with the KM Chef. And that's if you've gone to my website, I talk about creating content cuisine. And my blog part of my website is very old. I want to say I know that it's been at least 5 years since I've actually done a blog post, but that is the site where my bio and where my digital portfolio are. So that's enough for me to have the onus to keep it going. And I'm also thinking about resuscitating it next year.
Bethany,
I like that, Bethany.
Content cat lady. Very nice, Bethany.
Content cat lady. Yeah, that is. That's awesome.
What is your website, Miranda?
Thank you. So let's send people to my old website. So full disclaimer again, the blog part is not the most current. And if you like, I can share my screen and show you around, but it's very basic, and it is okkmchef.com. And I got that from Gordon Ramsay because everyone's like, okay, chef, okay, chef. So my fantasy is that people would really be that cooperative in my workplace and everyone would tell me okay all the time.
That's a wonderful concept pitch. I love it. I'll post that link in chat.
Thanks. That's my Twitter handle too.
Last call. Anyone? Any burning questions at the pit of your stomach that just need to be expressed?
So that you can sleep tonight.
Yes.
I think I have a quick question, or what
Please.
could be a quick question. For some of the places that I've applied to, it's been through email where they ask you to send a resume and the cover letter. Maybe it's just my impatience, I guess, but how long should I kind of wait, or should I follow up at all with places like that? Is there like a timeline I should go by? I don't know.
I usually give a week. So I feel like that is more than enough time if they are interested, if something came up and someone is out sick or on vacation or whatever other reason there may be for a delay. I think that after a week that you're perfectly within your rights, to follow up and say, hey, I just wanted to follow up and see if that position was still available. Because the thing is, you want to be sure that you are keeping your list of possibilities, true possibilities, and you are not holding out, entertaining something that may no longer be a possibility. So I think that a week is plenty of time. And at the very least, you should hear back. So even if they need more time, then they can communicate that as well. Oh, hey, I'm sorry. Our recruiter, was out, but you should be hearing from someone, because that's really just a prompt. So what you want to do is just invite people into the conversation. And that does two things. That also lets them know that you're still thinking about them. And then you can sort of, in your evaluation about how that internal communication works, you can find out whether or not they're communicating well internally. Have they, screened, gotten to the right, gotten your information to the right person? Because I think at the very least, if they have an initial screening or recruiter, that should definitely take place inside of 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, you're not impatient. Just organize. Great question.
Any others? Miranda, any final words of hope and or wisdom for job seekers out there?
Don't lose hope. Keep pushing. Your perfect position is out there, and our skills are in demand. So this is we're really in a wonderful position to be in, because we have skills that never go out of style. Sort of the format and the way that we apply them may change, but the fundamental skills that we have are very much in demand in the market. So thank you.
And thank you, Miranda. Speaking of never going out of style, the desire to be employed and get paid, that is always a timely topic, and we really appreciate you making the time for us this evening.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone being so engaged and participating. This has been really nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Those of us, and quick applause.
Thank you guys.
So those of us who are moderating the call will be leaving momentarily.